Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm your host Miss KK and this is The Wave. It is your weekly show that looks at topics related to personal, family and business finance, and all we are hoping is that by the time you get to the end of the series, you are really better equipped to make sound financial decisions. So if you're new here, thank you very much for stopping by, and if you're already a returning subscriber, an awesome appreciation. So today we are doing a video that I was asked by someone to actually just touch a little bit on the fuel prices. We've all noticed the fuel prices increasing and a lot of people are feeling it, whether you use a car, you use a public transport, you use a bus, you use whatever, the fuel prices has gone up and it's really affecting everyone. But I just want to tell you that Namibia isn't the only country that was affected by this fuel prices, so everyone is actually affected, and fuel isn't the only thing that is currently increasing. Across the globe, there is sort of some inflationary pressure that is sort of leading us towards a recession, and it's being affected by mainly, or it's being caused by mainly two things. Number one, the COVID-19 impact. A lot of companies and industry collapsed because of COVID-19 and they're trying to recover. And on top of that, the global supply chains were disrupted by the war in Ukraine and Russia. And given that there isn't sign of that war ending soon, it just means that we as consumer would continue to feel the burden. And also in a lot of countries like Zimbabwe, inflation is above 100%. United States, the inflation reached 9% the other week. And we also have UK, where a lot of consumers are depending on the food bank to actually get by. And the rest of African countries that don't have food bank, we as the end consumer unfortunately just need to tighten our belt in order to get through this tough time. And I just want to add here that fuel is not the only thing that has increased. We've seen food prices going up as a result of that disruption in the supply chain. We've seen energy prices going up. In Namibia, there was a 7-point-something adjustment in electricity at the beginning of this month. We've seen interest rate rising because of the various central banks trying to control inflation by making sure that consumers don't continue to spend, and then the spending is actually pushing the prices further. And we've also seen things like bank charges increasing. So in general, really as consumer, we are in for a rough ride, and we need to make sure that we are making the necessary adjustment to be able to bear those costs, because unfortunately for a lot of our employers, they are also affected. Their profitability is also somewhat affected by the rising input cost, so we can't expect that much salary adjustment, and therefore our incomes aren't rising at the same rate at which these expenses are increasing. So we just need to make sure that we are dealing with a low purchasing power of money and do the best we can under these circumstances. I've also seen quite a few looming strikes in public servants that haven't received salary increase over a couple of years, and those things would really put pressure again on so many things, and we need to just make sure that we are preparing ourselves. But nonetheless, today we are specifically focusing on fuel and what you can do to be able to survive the impact of the fuel price increasing. So number one, the first thing that you need to really do is you need to evaluate how much were you spending on fuel before the increases and after the increases. This is for you to be able to determine what is the incremental impact on your budget. So if we put some numbers to it, assuming you had a Polo and you spend 1,500 to work every month on fuel to work, and of course your other personal things per month, and now with the fuel price increasing, you are at 2,000 a month. So that means there's a 500 incremental on your budget. So we now need to assess how are we going to deal with this 500 extra, to the extent that we don't have a corresponding increase in income to be able to afford this 500, which is likely to be the case for many people. So the first thing after you've determined how much your incremental cost is, you need to determine, is there anything in your budget that you can cut out to accommodate this cost? Because unfortunately, fuel is an essential services for many people. You need the fuel to get to work, to get by on your day-to-day activities, but there are other things in your budget that are discretionary that you can afford to cut out in order to accommodate this. So things like stop buying takeaway every day at lunch and bringing food to work. Things like, cutting on entertainment budgets. Instead of going out every other weekend, you cut that out. Things like TV subscription that you currently don't use. And I know that a lot of guys spend like about 620 to just pay for the DSTV subscription that they have a soccer channel. So maybe cutting that out. And lastly, maybe canceling things like gym membership and actually going to run outside and exercising at home, so that you can save this money to be able to accommodate this increase in fuel. So that is the first thing that you need to do. And if you look at your budget and there is nothing you can cut out, you've looked at and everything is absolutely essential, you need to look at other alternative method in order for you to afford the fuel increases. So what I've done is I've split up the alternative method in terms of your daily commute, the fuel that you need to spend to get by on your day-to-day basis, and also your long distance trip. Maybe you need to take a trip to the north for some whatever reason you need to do. So I've split those up so we can discuss those tips separately. So the first thing that we need to really realistically look at is carpooling. Carpooling simply means that you don't drive your car to work alone, but you take other passengers with, so that you can share the split the fuel costs. So carpooling would generally work with a colleague, with a neighbor, or with a friend or a sister, for as long as that person is in your route to work and you're not really going out of your way to go pick up that person, because going out of your way could just means your fuel price could be, even your fuel cost could increase by going out of your way too much to take that person with to work. So how do you find out if someone lives in your area? You could ask around from people at work during lunch conversation, or you could literally put it in your WhatsApp status. A lot of people actually are using WhatsApp status, or actually just on social media. Look at people that are in your area and look to see who is actually in an efficient route for you to take with to work. And what carpooling allows you to do is you split the cost. You might not split 50-50. You might decide you're all filling up once a month and you drive this person's car for this week and you drive the other person's car for next week. Unfortunately, that comes with a little bit of inconvenience. That means you need to wake up a little bit early because you need to go pick up other people, and you need to factor that in your commute to work. But really, carpooling is the first priority in being able to share this cost. So assuming there's not really anybody you can carpool with to work, the next thing you can consider is alternative form of transport, such as public transport. And this could be normal taxi, it could be taxi apps, it could be also municipal buses. Unfortunately, it comes with an inconvenience because the taxi doesn't always take you straight to work like you normally would take yourself. But if you do the math and realize the taxi is cheaper, you might actually want to park the car at home, wake up a little bit earlier, use the taxi to get you to work. And it's not going to be comfortable because you know you own a car, but if your budget is really, really tight, and that is what it comes down to, rather do that in the interest of your pocket, rather than you trying to protect your ego and you trying to feel like you're being charged for coming to school or coming to work with a public bus or with a taxi. We've all been there. We've taken taxis before we bought those cars. So surely we can park those cars and actually take taxi if it's cheaper to take a taxi. So you just need to do the math, do the taxi fare daily for a return trip, multiply by the number of times you need to take a taxi, and then compare that with the petrol price. And if it works out cheaper to be able to do that, then rather take taxi or rather take municipal buses to be able to afford your petrol budget. This other approach is a hybrid approach where you decide on what days to drive and what days to actually take a taxi. So some days you might actually maybe you have important meetings in the morning and you can't afford to be late. So you might decide for those days where you have things in the morning that you can't afford to be 5 minutes late, you maybe drive to work. And days where you don't have anything urgent, or on weekends where you really just need to go get food from the shop, you maybe use taxi, because that would help you control your ultimate cost. So you can decide, I am prepared to spend 2,000 max on petrol, and if that means putting 1,000 in the car and using 1,000 on public transport, let it be it if that works out cheaper. So a hybrid approach is also an option for you to use. The second last option that we have in this daily commute is list your car up for driving apps that allows you to pick up passengers again on your route. I know in Namibia there's quite a few apps, but there are certain apps that requires you to be a taxi, but there are also other apps that don't require you to be a registered taxi. For example, InDrive doesn't require you to be a registered taxi. You put up your car, people can request a ride. If someone is close to you and they are in your way to work, you can pick that person up, you get that taxi fare. If you do that frequently enough, maybe when you go to work and when you come back from work, if you do it long enough, you might actually get enough money to cover your next petrol budget. But this also comes with a bit of sacrifice. You need to wake up a little bit early, and you need to be able to only accept those trips that are on your way to work, so that again you're not going too out of your way to accommodate this person, because at the end of the day you don't want to be making a loss from trying to pick up additional passengers. And lastly, in terms of the local commute, etc., you can consider alternative method of transport. You could walk to the shop if it's near. Okay, obviously to the extent possible, you could cycle to work. There's at least three people that are cycling to work at our company, and one person that walks to work. And not necessarily because they're poor, they're just realizing that there is other alternative and they're close enough. So if you are going to church and it doesn't really require you to drive, rather walk. If you are going to the gym and you can cycle, rather cycle. So you just need to look at what's practical for you in order for you to be saving a little bit of money from your fuel. So those are some of the tips that I have for like the local commute, your day-to-day commute. And lastly, also before I say lastly, because I'm gonna keep saying lastly, you must plan your trip. So we have these things when you have a car, you drive from home to work, then you drive back home, then you realize, I was supposed to meet up with a friend, then you go drive to a friend, then you realize, actually I was supposed to go get bread, then I go get bread. So you just need to plan that. If you are driving out from home to somewhere, you make the most out of your trip. You don't go visit unnecessary people unless you have actually planned to do that. You are squeezing as much as you can in a trip. So that means if you maybe go to work, on your way from work, you pick up something from the shop so that you don't have to drive from home back to the shop to just go get bread, for example. So that is just some of the things we can do. It might not make a huge difference, but cumulatively, if you are doing some of these things, it will add up at the end of the day. Then we look at long distance commute. Long distance commute are actually expensive now for us to drive alone. So previously you really wanted to just drive in peace. You want to go to the north. You don't even want to take a passenger. But now you really can't afford to do that, except if your budget allows, of course. And except maybe if you are driving with family and the car was already for you. There's nothing you can do. But for a lot of us, we drive most of the time empty cars, or we drive just one or two people in the car. So the first priority that you need to do is you can enroll on Intercity. Intercity is a really great app that came in Namibia. You can list as a private car. You can list your ride there. People book in advance. You actually set the price, and then you can accept booking or reject people, and then you can be able to cover the cost. So currently from Windhoek to the north, it's currently I think 300 or 280. Some people are charging 280, some people are 300, some people are 350. You actually have a choice to determine how much you want to charge. So look at how much other people are charging, but also look at how much you want to cover towards your petrol, and just balance that. So if you can get at least 3 people in, they will pay you 300 times 3. That's at least 900 contributed to your petrol budget that you wouldn't have otherwise had. But Intercity is a paid subscription. I think you either pay $20 per month or you subscribe to $100 a year. So personally, I have $100 paid subscription. So every time I want to go to the north or go to the coast, I just look if there's someone driving around the same time, I make a booking, and then I can arrange with that person. So don't just drive an empty car to the north. Pick up some people on Intercity and then actually get them to contribute towards your petrol. Alternatively, you can use still long distance buses that have a booking option, because when you have a car, the thing that you're compromising by using other alternative transport is convenience. It's not just convenience for you to go to a public transport, but if you can find one that is actually convenient in terms of you book, that means you are guaranteed one time to depart and what time you're going to get there. So the likes of Intercape, the likes of private shuttles, those ones that have booking options are relatively easier and don't really inconvenience you, like going to the buses and then going to the 7-seaters and waiting for the 7-seaters to get full. So just look at what options you have without compromising too much on your convenience. And also, if you are going to go to an event, for example a wedding, we are normally attending, especially now that it's wedding season, we are going to be driving up north. We do know there's a lot of people that are going to come from the same town going to that wedding. So if you drive an empty because you couldn't pick up any passenger on your way to the event, on your way back, please don't drive back empty. Don't be shy to engage with people at the reception and ask them if there's anybody that is in need of transport going back to Windhoek. And obviously they're not going to just go for free. They would pay you what they would have paid if they had used public transport. So don't expect them to share your petrol 50-50, but at least they should pay what they would have paid if they had used public transport, and then you don't actually lose. Because at the end of the day, sometimes you're like, no, I'd rather go empty than accepting 300. But remember, you are already going to spend on that fuel. So rather getting a little bit than not getting anything will still go towards a long way. And lastly here, getting toward the end here, I just want to cover a few other basics regarding, making sure that your engine is performing optimally, because if your engine is not performing optimally, it means that you're not actually using your fuel efficiently. So the first thing that you need to ensure is make sure that you're not skipping on your service. Make sure that your car is fully serviced, your injectors are clean, your brakes aren't faulty, your tire pressure is in check, because those things, greasy, dirty injectors, greasy or worn out brakes, and incorrectly inflated tires actually affect the performance of the car. And if your car is not performing optimally, that means it's also burning fuel that it shouldn't actually be burning. And also making sure that you're not carrying too much excessive weight. Avoid having too much junk in your car, because if your car is heavy, your engine will need a lot of power to pull, and as a result, you're not getting that much efficiency from your fuel. Second thing I want to talk about here is the use of aircon and heater. I know it's extremely cold now and we all want to be warm going to work, but believe me, a heater would use a lot of fuel if it's on as opposed to being off. So if you can, try not to switch on your heater or try not to switch on your aircon. If you think like it's really hot, rather open the window, especially if you're driving in town and you're driving a low speed. But the moment you go on long roads and you're driving 120, by you opening the window, it's actually causing more fuel inefficiency, because the wind resistance causes the car to be swerving a lot, and that also again puts a lot of pressure. So if you are driving low speed, rather have your windows open, but if you are driving a high speed, you can then close your window and then rather use your aircon if it really is necessary. And just avoid speeding. Speeding is just a way to burn your fuel faster, so try and drive a reasonable speed and try and drive within speed limit. That way you're actually getting to your destination safe and you are actually using your fuel optimally. Overall, there's really no secret. Just hang in there, try to budget as well as you can. The tips that we've actually applied here would also apply to many other things, just like energy. Instead of you maybe having your geyser on all the time, try and see if you can maybe bath with cold water in the evening and only bath with warm water in the morning. It's really up to you. So try and see if you can make the necessary adjustment to make sure that you're getting the most of your low purchasing power of money. Until next time, this is all we had from you today. Keep watching and share the videos with your friends and family, and let's continue learning together. And it's goodbye.